So hello everyone. This is our second day of advanced data visualization with ggplot2 workshop. I'm Wenbin, and as usual, I have already sent the slides before the workshop. Here are some kind of notations about the slides. Some code and pseudocode starts with this little arrow, and the link is underlined. Important terminology is in the bold font. And from this workshop slides, you will see a lot of times of this little yellow man. This means at that time we will go to the R Markdown file to practice some of the usage of our ggplot functions. So yesterday we go over the data visualization basics, getting started with the ggplot2, and also learn some data cleansing functions. And today we are going to learn more details about the ggplot2 object, specifically building the plot layer by layer. So we are going to explore different plot types and getting more control over the plot. So basically this enables us to customize the plot based on our own desire. So this is a 3-hour workshop. We are going to teach 45 minutes and then have a 10-minute break, and then continue teaching for the 45 minutes, and then take another 10-minute break. And lastly, we are going to have a 30 minutes teaching, and the rest of time will be practice and Q&A. So the topics of today is about the layers. So when we talk about building the plot layer by layer, what do we mean? So basically, these layers compose of several subjects like the geometry, statistical transformation, and also the positional adjustment. Move on, we will learn the scale, how to actually set the specific color to some kind of value, and then how to facet our plot into different panels. And lastly, today we are going to talk about the coordinate systems. And based on the coordinate system, we can do some kind of interesting things. For example, try to convert a bar plot into a pie plot using the coordinate system. So before we started to learn something new, I want to take some time to give some summary about what we learned yesterday. I think this is really very helpful to get a recap of the knowledge. So basically after this summary, I hope everyone is on the same page, and then we can move on to the new study. So yesterday we talked about the several key components of a ggplot2 object. So specifically, there are 3 different components: the data, which is the source of the plot, and then we define a set of aesthetic mapping between the variables in the data and also the visual properties of the figure. So, and then we are going to have at least one layer. This layer determines how we are going to plot the data, like how to render the observations onto the image. So basically, in the right panel, we listed the syntax of a ggplot2. So it's quite straightforward. That we have the data, we have a layer. This layer might contain some aesthetic mappings. So the layers, later we will talk in detail what is the layer and what's inside the layer. But based on the key components here, defines what the data we are based on, and then define a mapping between the data and the aesthetic properties. For example, the X or Y location, positions, and also some other visual properties. So based on this ggplot, we actually have 3 ways to invoke the ggplot function to make the plots. For example, here we specifically specify the data frame and the mapping within the ggplot function. So this is very suitable when all other layers use the same data and also the same set of aesthetic mapping. So if for some of the layers use a different aesthetic mapping, so probably you can try ggplot only for the data, if the data is used by all the layers. So if for all of the layers, they use different data, they use different setting. So basically, you can just invoke a ggplot. So basically, the data and the mapping, they are optional arguments in the function. So the third one is also doable. So yesterday we also talked about the architecture of ggplot, and also I think it's also like the design, the foundation or the principles of ggplot. So basically we have those several components, and this is based on the Grammar of Graphics book that in the bottom is the data and aesthetics. So this two is what we learned yesterday. And today we are going to learn everything except the theme. So the theme topic will be tomorrow's topic. We actually have a lot of things to go over in tomorrow's lecture. For the rest of them, we are going to learn one by one today. So here is still a summary about the data part, because we know that data is usually the most time-consuming part when we making plots. So yesterday we talked about the variable types, specifically the continuous variable, the discrete or categorical variables, and how to convert the categorical into factors. And also there is a very useful data structure called data frame. Basically, we build our ggplot purely on this data frame yesterday. And for the data wrangling functions, we talk about how to manipulate the observations using filter. By specifying some criterion, we keep the rows that satisfy the criterion. We can also reorder the data frame based on some variables using the arrange function. And if we, for example, we filter several, we filter the data frame and create some subsets of the data frame, we can use the bind rows to combine the different data frames into a final data frame and then making the plot unit. So I think those three functions are really useful, especially when you are doing some data science, data cleansing job in the R computing environment. So manipulate the variables, we have to select and mutate to create a new variable selected to try to just keep the variables as you desire. And then we have this join that can merge the data frame by the specified columns. We also can do some data reshaping using the pivot longer or pivot wider to convert the data frame from the white format to the long format, and from the long format to back to the white format. So this is sometimes really useful when you are using the facet function that basically you want to convert some columns into just one single column, and then you facet this single column to make different panels. Each panel contains a subset of your figure, subset of your data. So we also mentioned the summarize, group by and summarize to do some summarize of your data. For example, you want to compute the mean of each of the group. So basically the group by and summarize is what you are looking for. And then lastly, we talk about the pipe function that we can chain all the functions together. And then this pipe function can actually make your code looks nicer, and also it's much easier to maintain and transfer to other purpose. So this is the data wrangling functions we talked about yesterday. And yesterday we'll also go over the aesthetic mappings, specifically using this AES function. So basically this function will take the aesthetic and the variable pairs. And I think in our practice example yesterday, we actually noticed the data variable types is kind of important. Specifically in one of our examples, we specify the variable, which is a continuous variable, to the shape or to the color. Then we will meet some kind of error when we use the ggplot. So basically you probably need to make sure the mapping you specified, for example, if it's a shape, it's some kind of discrete aesthetic values, then you need to make sure the input variable should be discretized or the categorical variables as well. So this aesthetic and variable pairs will describe how the variables map to the visual properties of the geometry objects. So specifically for the geometry objects, we are going to learn today later. We have some kind of properties like the shape, like the color, and also like the line type if it's a line plot or something. So basically here it's the usage of the aesthetic mapping. You can directly specify the variables name to the aesthetic variables. Usually like if you it also supports you to do some simple transformation. For example, here we can apply the log transformation to a variable and assign to the aesthetic variables. So that's everything we learned yesterday. So it's a quite short recap. And if you feel strange, like you are familiar about any concepts, please go back to the slides and then maybe take a look at the slides, try to pick up the knowledge. So for today's lecture, we want to start it by talking about the layers in ggplot2. So basically the components of the layered grammar is that we have a default data set and a set of mappings from variables to aesthetics. So this is actually defined in our ggplot function. When we invoke the function, we specify the data, we specify the aesthetic mappings. So those settings will be our default settings. If we want to, for example, if we add an additional layers to the plot, and we don't specify the data and the mapping, then the previously set data and the mapping will be our default choice. And we can, after invoke that function, we will add one or more layers. Each of them should composed of a geometric object, which is just like the visual object in the plot. For example, scatter plot is it's a dot. It's a single dot. If it's a line plot, then it shows like a line. So basically, it's a geometric object. And also sometimes we want to do some statistical transformation, basically try to summarize the data in some way. For example, when we plot the scatter plot, if your data points is too many, usually we probably will want to do some kind of density estimation on the plot and then plot the 2D density plot, etc. And finally is position adjustment. We will learn later. And optionally, for each of the layer, you can specify your own data set and also your own aesthetic mappings. So this will override the default. It will directly use the input data and the aesthetic mapping if there is any. So after we do the layers, we actually try to have the mapping between the aesthetics and also the variables. But usually this is just a mapping between two spaces. But for the individual values, we still don't have that kind of manual setting. So this is this can be set using the scale that we can actually map the values in the data space to the values in the aesthetic space. So for example, if we map a variable, it's which contains a value as the apple, banana, etc., and then we want to map to the color space as a blue and white. So this scale is actually doing this job, like try to map the apple to red and the banana to blue. So basically, it's kind of a value mapping. And we have a coordinate system that tries to map the data coordinates to the panel of the graphics. So specifically, we know that X and Y axis, we have different labels showing the scale of each of the axes. So these coordinates can help us to map the values there. And lastly, there is a facet specification that specifies how to break up and also display a subset of our data. So in the right panel, we actually can see this layer is the grammar of layers that we can specify the mapping data, geometry, and the statistical transformation and the position. So if you run this later in our practice, we will show that this part is actually equivalent to P plus geometry point. So basically, this is like the bottom one is just like a short abbreviation of the previous layer setting. So this is actually equivalent in the ggplot2 syntax. So after we do the layers, I still want to mention the data water plot generation process that we have our original data, and then we map the variables to the aesthetics and based on the facet specification. So basically, we will try to split the data into some kind of sub panels, and for each of them, we'll transform the scales, compute the aesthetics, and sometimes, for example, if we do the statistical transformation, we will train the scales and then map the scales. And lastly, we will try to render the geometries, and then finally we have the plots. So this is the whole process of how ggplot2 transform from the data to the figures. So the very first topic we want to touch today is geometry, which is the visual objects we are going to use, and this geometry is actually the type of visual properties that tries to render in the layers or control the plot type. So basically here I listed some of the basic objects, and later we are going to learn some of other objects, but here is like very basic ones. So for example, for the geometry geom blank, so it will display nothing. It will just not do anything. But the following one will have some interesting functions, like the geom curve, try to draw a curved line. So basically you can specify the starting point and the end point, and then the curvature of the line, and it will plot the curve for you. And also it also contain some kind of arguments to allow you add some directional arrow. So basically this is useful when you try to like specifically draw a curve and point to some space in the plot. So the geom segment will draw a line segment, specify the start and end position. It will draw a straight line, and also the geom line, it will try to draw a straight line, specify the slope and the intercept. And geom path tries to collect the observations in the order of the data. So this is sometimes useful when you have like already ordered data, like you collect the data points according to time, and then you want to visualize like the random path or random walk of your observations. So this geometry path will show how the data collected in this time course. So the geometry line will collect the observations in the order of variables on the x-axis, and those are what the line plots. The following, the geom rectangular will draw a rectangular for you. So this is usually useful when you want to highlight some area of the plot. And the geom polygon, instead of drawing just a square, it will try to draw some more complicated shapes. And geom ribbon will try to draw draw a ribbon with the vertical thickness. So basically, this is quite useful when you want to plot some kind of mean with some standard variation. So basically, it will show the confidence interval for you. So I think it's just a very short introduction about the geometry basics. So let's go and do some practice. So I think you can just copy the code, git clone, with this GitHub link to your own folder. So if you met some error like saying the folder already exists, simply try to remove the folder and git clone again. So if you go to the terminal and just copy and paste the command, sorry, I think it's someone's email address. So, and paste it to the terminal, and it will git clone everything for you. And after that, you can open the R Markdown file from the RStudio. So here, try to check the files and find the QC bio data visualization with ggplot. And this is day 2. You can simply open the data visualization. So in the end of this workshop, we are going to use some packages. If you haven't installed it right now, you can postpone. When we have some break time, you can try to install those packages. So for today, we still stick with the MPG dataset. And in our previous lecture, we talked about the equivalence between the layer and also the geom point. So you can actually run this chunk of code and see the results. So basically for the baseline, we simply just use specify the data as the MPG, and this will simply contain basically nothing. And if you specify the aesthetic mapping as the X and as the displacement, and the Y as the highway, it will give you some kind of ticks, X and Y axis. But because we don't specify any geometry layer, so this will not show any geometry points because they don't know how to render the data points there. So basically for the layer part and also for the geometry part, we can actually see the results. These two figures is essentially the same figure because the geom point is this. You can think it's just an abbreviation of the known sentence here. It has the aesthetic mapping. It has a geometry setting and also the statistic. Basically, it's also some argument like the mapping statistics is also an argument in the geom point function. So basically, these two are equivalent from the results. And we talk about the basic types of geometry. For example, for the blank one, if you just run geom blank, so basically you can see the results is essentially the same as the previous baseline. And if we want to add some lines in the plot, we can run this code. Specifically, there are some useful lines for you to use. Like the V9, which tries to draw a vertical line, simply just specify the x-intercept, and the H9, H stands for the horizontal line. So what you need to specify is the y-intercept. So I think this tool is particularly useful when you want to make a bar plot or box plot, and you want to specify where is the boundary, and the geometry H9 is particularly helpful for you. And because this is a line type figure, so you can actually specify other properties for the line. For example, the line type, whether it's dashed line, solid line, and also you can specify the color of the line and even the thickness of the line wise. So here, there is another function we mentioned as a basic geometry as the AB line, which tries to draw a straight line based on the slope and the intercept you specified. For example, sometimes when we do the data realization, we want to draw a diagonal line. So basically, you can specify the intercept to be 0 and slope to be 1. This is exactly the y equals x equation in the 2D space. So for that one, we actually can see the results. It's a blue dashed line with y equals to x, although currently we didn't have the data plotted. So the x and y scales is not so clear right now. So besides the straight line, we can also do some curved lines using the geom curve. Specifically here, what we do is try to specify a data df, so which specifies the start point, the start point x1 and y1 and the end point x2, y2. So basically, if we specify them inside the geometry curve, do the mapping, and then it will try to plot a figure for us, like the curved figure for us. And because here we specify the curvature, we can actually adjust whether we want the curve to be a convex curve or a concave curve. So if you specify the curvature to be some negative value, then it will draw a concave function for you. And because we added the arrow function, it will essentially give us an arrow at the end of the curve. Besides the curvature curve, we can use the geometry segment to draw a straight line for us. So this is kind of different from the AB line, because the AB line we only specify the slope and the intercept. It will draw a line that don't have a starting point and end point. So basically here, the segment will strictly have a start point and an end point, and the line is in between the start and the end. So this is something different from the AB line. So besides that, we talk about the line, geometry line, and also the geometry path. So the difference between them is that the geometry line will collect the data points based on the order of the x-axis. So basically here we can see they are collected from adjacent x values, and the path is actually collecting the data observation based on the data frame itself. So it will not first order the data point according to x-axis. Instead, it will just using the original order of the data frame to collect the points. So as I said, this probably is too chaotic to be meaningful. So sometimes if you are working with some kind of algorithm, like a random walk, you probably want to see whether, for example, whether your algorithm converge in finite steps. So this can actually show how the algorithms find the directions in each of the iterations. So this is the only one that I think is useful. Usually we don't use the geometry path that much. So maybe we can take 2 minutes or 3 minutes to do these 2 exercises. So the first one is try to adjust the curved direction. And then the second one is try to plot a bar plot. So I think I can give some hints about the exercise. So for the first one, it's quite straightforward that we can actually try it right now. For example, if we specify the curvature to be some positive number, they give us some convex function shape. And then if we specify it to be a negative value, then we will expect it give us some concave function. So this is how we control the curvature, how to control the convex and the concave. And for the second axis, exercise is it's more like a motivation example, like try to motivate to think how to make the plot. Here, I think later, because we are going to talk about the dot plot alone using the geometry bar function. Right now, I think you can consider if you are using the V9 geom V9 function, then you can try to first summarize the MPG data based on the group, like group by the class, and then summarize the data to get the mean. And then you can use the geom segment to plot the figure just by specifying the 2 points from the x-axis to some to the mean value, and then you can use the geom segment to do that. And also you can use the geom bar to do that, but later we will talk about the geom bar. So besides this line plots, we also have this region plots. Here is a usage of the geom rectangular, tries to draw a square rectangular based on the mappings you provide. So here, let's just see the results for a moment. So basically for the rectangular, it will try to draw a region based on the 4 points you provide, the x mean, y mean, y max, and x mean, x max, y mean, and y max. So basically, this is pretty useful when you, for example, want to highlight a region in the plot. So you can actually consider try to draw a geometry rectangular. And for this geometry polygon, it tries to collect the points you specified and then make the plot from there. So basically for the DF, we have this x1, y1, x2, y2. When we specify them into the rectangular, it will give us the desired region. And for the DF2, it's more complicated because we specified a pair of x and y on the plot, and based on the order, it tries to connect them and then make a compact region based on these points. So this is just a small example about the polygon. All right, so after talking about the basic types, let's move on to talk about the geometries based on the number of variables. So if we only have one variables, and based on the variable types, discrete or categorical, or the continuous nature, we can actually use the geom bar and also the other geom histogram to make the plots. So usually when we just have one variables, we care about the distribution of this variable. So for the discrete one, it will try to do a counting of each of the discrete values. So this will give you a discrete distribution. And for the continuous, we can actually, when we use the geometry histogram, it will try to put the variables into different bins and then count the occurrence of each bin. So this will give us some kind of histogram, and this denotes the distribution of the value. So besides this visualization, there are also some other visualizations. The most frequently used is the geom density, and we can also utilize the frequency poly or the dot plot to visualize the distribution. So usually when we just have one variable, we care about the distribution, and based on the types of the variable, we have different ways to visualize them. And when we have two variables, if they are both continuous, then we can make the scatter plot, try to show the relationship using the geometry point. And the geom smooth tries to smooth the line, either using a straight line or some kind of generalized linear models, or even the generalized additive models. It tries to fit a model to the data, and the geom quantile tries to fit a quantile regression. Geom rug is trying to show the marginal distribution of each of the variables based on the data. So if we have one continuous variable and one discrete variable, usually we use the geom bar, specify the identity, tries to show the for example the sum of another variable, the continuous variables, and then we can also use a box plot, try to show the distribution and the difference between two groups. The geom violin is similar to the box plot, but it contains more information about the distribution itself. And the geometry jitter is trying to randomly jitter overlapping points. Later we will see some kind of demonstration about how to use it. And if we have two variables to be both discrete, then I think usually we will convert it to a 3-variable problem, like the occurrence between two variables. Like for example, 2x2 table, or even in the like classification scenario, we have this confusion matrix, etc. So basically, we can consider it as a 3-variable problem, like the 2 variables, and then the third one is the occurrence of the joint, like a joint occurrence of 2 variables. So basically, we'll talk about later. Basically, using that conditions table or something, we can use the heat map to display them. So, but right now, I think most of the time, we are going to deal with the continuous. Both of them are continuous, or at least one of them are continuous. And for the 2 variables, we can show the 2D distribution. Specifically, if you have a lot of data points, usually using the binned density plot or the density 2D or even the hex, then we can visualize the data pretty well. And then we can also display the uncertainty of the data by using the geometry crossbar arrow bar or the point range. Specifically, in the ggplot2, they also contain other geometries that is specifically designed for the spatial data. So for example, the geometry map, it can actually contains a lot of shapes and maps. For example, the world map or even the map of certain states in the United States. But because our focus is on the continuous data, we are not going to talk too much about the spatial data in this workshop. So this is for the 2-variable case, and for the 3-variable case, we can actually use the geometry contour, and which is trying to show, for example, x-axis and y-axis. So there is another variable which is z, and it denotes some value. So we can connect the points that have the same z, so that we have this contour plot. Because in the ggplot2, we are going to draw a 2D dimension, so it's usually very hard to visualize the 3D dimensions just using a 2D plane. So actually, we can utilize some kind of tricks. For example, here we can set 2 variables as x and y axis, and map the set variables to some aesthetic properties. Aesthetic variables. For example, here mapped with color. So the left panel is actually what the left panel is doing is that tries to have a set direction, but still we are visualize everything in the 2D plot. So the set direction is specified to map to the lightness of the color in this example. So besides that, we have the geom tile. So basically, this will give us some kind of the heat map format. You have the X and the Y, and then use the set variable as a color. And the geom raster is a faster version of geom tile because we fix the size of the tiles to be the equal. So this will usually generate a much faster plot for us. If you are dealing with a lot of dimensions, then geom raster is definitely something you want to try. So maybe we can move on to the practice example. We have several examples for the one variable, two variable, and three variable case. So the first one, single variable, we can try the geom bar. As we said, if it's a discrete value, then it will try to count the occurrence, of the discrete variable and then plot it. And I see the questions in the chat room. All right. Let me see. Okay, this is for the discrete case for the bar plot. And if we have a continuous one, then we can use the geom histogram. And by specify the number of bins, for example, you specify the bin wise, you are going to, you can have a change of the resolution. So this one is also useful when you are try to visualize the distribution of a continuous variable. And I think I can give 1 or 2 minutes for this small exercise. So for example, here in the previous plot, it's apparently it's not ordered by the number of counts in the ascending order. So if we want to do that, one specific observation is that we can actually see the current order is probably by the alphabetical level. Like the C is before the M, is before the P. So basically, it's you can consider it's ordered by the alphabetical level. So what we need to do is first to get the current, like get a order first. So for example, here we can define my levels as so basically we want to first do a counting of each class, take the number and then sort it in some way. So we can use the MPG and then select the class. So basically we are specifically care about these variables, and then we can pull it out. So this will convert the data frame into just the vectors. And then we can use a table function. So we can actually check the number of occurrence of each of the class. So right now it's still not sorted. So we can change the function together just using the sort function. And hopefully this one will sort it from the small to the big. So after that, we can take the names. Right now it's a named vector, so we can take the names out. Simply just using the names, it will give you the names of the name of the named vector. So here we can assign the value, the output value to my levels. So next we want to do some kind of ordering. So as we mentioned in our first workshop yesterday, we can actually use the, so basically we want to convert one of the variables into a factor, and that factor has this desired levels. So we can use the mutate function we talked about yesterday, that we want to have the class to be a factor. And this factor takes the original class, but we specify the levels to be the desired level. So after running that, maybe before running that, we can check. We can name it as mpg2. We can check the original class and see it's purely on the string or on the character type. And then after we run that, oops, wait a moment. I think I didn't run the first line first. And then mpg2 check the type of the class, and you see the levels is now in the ascending order as we defined. So after we modify this data frame, we can redo the plotting. Simply specify ggplot and then specify the geometry bar. And now the plot will show like the ascending order from the smallest occurrence to the biggest occurrence. So this is nothing special, but just simply change the factor, change a variable to a factor with the desired levels. And the desired levels will guide the ggplot2 to make the plot at the ascending order. I think this is for this small exercise, and hopefully it's useful to you. If you don't know this before, probably you can take a note, maybe take a picture of the code. So it's not really like fancy things. So for the continuous variable, besides the histogram showing the distribution, we also learned that we also mentioned that we can use the other functions to show the distribution. So here for example, for the frequency poly, it will show this frequency as a line plot, and also the density. Here you will get a more smooth version of the density because it's based on the local neighborhood estimation. And for the dot plot, you will see like for each of the intervals, we will have the dot representing how many occurrences there. And for the two variables, we have used this before, that we can use the geometry point to plot a scatter plot. And if we want to summarize it using a statistical transformation, we can use either using the geom smooth and add the method, either the linear model or the lowest regression. And the last one is about the marginal distribution. We can use the geom-rag to show the marginal distribution of our x and y axis. So let's see the results here. For the this is using the linear model, and this is the lowest regression. So the lowest regression, you can consider it as a local regression, that it will try to fit the data based on the local neighborhood of points. So it will show more detail of the trend at a specific x. So in the previous one, it will show a general trend across all the x, and the lowest regression will try to fit a local regression for each of the part of the data. And for the rag, we can see compared to the previous one, it will have those line densities here. And this is actually denoting the occurrence or the density of each of the at a specific value. So it will try to show both the marginal distribution of x and y at the same time. So if we have other like discrete variables in these two variables, we can visualize them using the bar plot or the box plot. So for the bar plot, because we know that if it's a discrete variable, the default behavior is to do some counting, try to count the occurrence of certain variables. But if we are going to supply it with the continuous variables, then we should specify the statistic to be identity that try to repress the counting behavior instead of just use the values we provide with them. For example, the highway here is a continuous variable. So if we don't specify this, the default is counting, then they will meet some problems. But if we specify the statistic to be identity, they will directly use the highway values. So we can just check. The highway is probably simply the sum of each of the category of X. And we can also plot the box plot by specify the geom box plot and specify the aesthetic mappings. So the box plot will show the median the quantile range, like the top quantile, bottom quantile, and also the median. So it kind of has some distribution flavor, but the data is still like the information is too limited. So instead, the violin plot will actually show a more detailed of distribution at each of the specific point. You can see whether we have a lot of data in this area or not. So the detail plot is trying to put some kind of a randomness on the plot so that the plot will not overlap too much in the scatter. So here, if we don't use detail, you will see all the dots it's lined up at the specific value point. And for a single dot, we cannot tell whether it's just a single dot or multiple dots, but they are just perfectly aligned with each other. Instead, if you add this data in the position, and then you will see they are like spread more out from each other. So this will give us a more clear idea about how many points at this particular level. So besides the continuous and the discrete variable, we also have the 2D density. Simply, you can use the geometry X to show them. And I think we can take a little break from here. And after we come back, I will finish the rest of the class. So when you have a lot of scatter plots, when you have a lot of data, let me see. Then the 2D density is a good option to make your plots less crowded, but it will also show like the kind of like a joint distribution between two variables. So unit density plot is pretty good for when you have a large data points. And besides that, I think one of the another very important plot type is the arrow bar plot. Basically, if you have several groups and then you want to compare them based on the mean or based on the arrow bar, try to show if there is any kind of a significance. Usually, this is what we the plot is what we want to pursue. So basically, here. In this ggplot, simply map the y min and y max with the value, and then this with the standard deviation. For example, if the y is the group mean and the SE is the standard deviation, it will show you the plot looks like in this case. Like for example, if you use the geometry crossbar, it will plot the mean, the standard deviation, just using some kind of box. And sometimes we want to plot it with the point with the range. Simply the point it's at the middle of the range. So I think usually we call it as a forest plot or something. It's usually used in many of the epidemiology publications. So you can consider to use these two plots to plot the error bar and the point range. So for the three variables, we here give two examples. One is the control plot, and one is the heat map. So for the control plot, simply specify what is x and y. You can specify another z to denote the controls. And there are two different functions, geometry control or geometry control field. So the control geometry control will only give you some line plot, and the control field will give you another density like plot. So if you run it, you can see the effects of these two functions. This will give you some kind of control signal here. And for the heat map, here we create a new data frame with x and y, and also with the value to be some random value between 0 and 100, 1 and 100. Then we can use the geom tile to plot the heat map. Simply specify the x and y, and with the field, the set variable as a value. So after you run this, you will see this heat map like plot. So this is just a demo, small example of using ggplot2 to create a heat map. And if you are really in your research want to do the heat map, you can try these three different methods: P heat map, complex heat map, or GG heat map. So they are specialized the package for plotting heat map. They provide a lot of good examples to very detailed tutorials and very fancy figures. So probably you can refer to them. So all right, so previously we mentioned the geometries based on the number of variables and the variable types, like I mentioned them, and then what choice you can choose. Usually, this is a small suggestion that we can actually we actually want to choose the geometry based on the visualization goal. So this is I think it's really important that your goal should be the first place, and then you choose what geometry to use instead of you decide, okay, what kind of variables I have, and then what geometry I need to use. So basically, if you want to show the distribution, you can consider the histogram or the density plot. If you want to do some kind of a comparison, but also show the distribution, you can use the box plot or even the one-in plot. And if you want to compare across the groups, then bar plot or even the dot plot should be your choice. And here, as I mentioned in the arrow bar, you can actually use the arrow bar with the bar plot or even use the arrow bar with the dot plot. And if you want to show the relationship between the variables, you can pursue the scalar plot. So this is some basic plot types we covered just now, and it's like each of them have some advantage in visualizing part of the relationship. So here is a more detailed of the plots. For example, if you are going to use do some comparison, you can try to make the ggplot with the desired view, and but basically they are pretty similar in showing the same relationship. And if you want to show the part to whole, you can consider using the staked bar plot. And if you want to show the distribution, the density plot or the ridge plot is usually what we use, and also the violin plot and the box plot. And if you want to show the time course data, you only pursue the line plot or even the arrow plot. And if you want to show the correlation, scatter plot is usually what we use. And here I provide a website at the R gallery. So basically, if you go to the website, they provide a lot of good examples. You can directly copy paste the code and modify to make the plots based on your own data. So that's everything about the geometry. And the next we move on to the following parts. The first one is statistical transformation. So basically, as the plot shown here, is that we want to transform our data into some way. For example, here it's trying to get a density or the contour of the certain data. So this part we actually didn't try to dive that deep, but I still want to emphasize for the stats function and the alternative form using the geometry. So for example, using the stats bin is equivalent to using the geom bar with the statistics specified to be bin. And the bin 2D is a geometry bin 2D with the specified. And I think the usually we will meet with the contour, like the stats contour, and also the smooth that specify the statistics to be smooth. And in the bar plot, we show that the stats bar count is actually equivalent to the stats count, and the stat identity equivalent to the stats equals to identity string in the geometry point. So basically, these are interchangeably used, and because we focus on the geometry part, so I think usually I will just stick with the alternative form instead of using the stat function directly. This is just a very simple introduction. There are more to explore. You can check the ggplot2 book to figure them out. But for this workshop, we are stick with the geometry and specify the stat parameter to be some value. And another important part is the position adjustment. So basically, as we see in the previous example, that this jitter, so it will add a little random noise to every positions so that you can clearly see the plots. They are not overlapping that much as the previous one. So besides this position details, you can also specify the notch or the jitter dot. So basically, this will have different effects later in the example. In the workshop materials, we will see the results. But here is that one thing I want to mention is that because we are adding some random noise to every position, so probably if you just using the position equals the string data, you will see different results whenever you run the code because it's a random noise. There is no guarantee that you will generate the same figure, like the position will be random. So another alternative way to specify it is just using the position data, this function, just put this function, replace this string with this function and set the seed within this function. So there is a parameter seed, which will specify the random seed you use when you generate a random noise. So after you specify the seed, you will always get the same results whenever you run the code. So this is for the position adjustment.
Is there a way to generate one dimension but not the other? I mean, obviously you can do it with the data.
Right.
But is there no other way to say this is beta X, this is beta Y?
I haven't looked into that detail, but I think it's doable. I see some kind of modification on that. Yeah, but that's a very good question. So at least in some of the data types, for example, if we are having one categorical variable and the others are the continuous variables. So basically in this plot, it will only jitter around the horizontal line. It will not jitter around the vertical line. So basically, I think it's configurable. Probably you can just put a question mark on the function and see if there is an option there. as I said, like there are so many options there, we cannot remember everything. You only just check the help page on the RStudio would be good. So besides the point, I think there is also some other usage for the bar plot. For example, if we specify the position stake, it will stake the bar plots of each component in this grouped bar plot. And if we specify the position field, it will try to normalize the data to all have the same level. And this one is usually what we saw, like in some paper, they try to plot the cell composition change across some variable across two different groups. So basically, you can say that we can actually achieve that using the position field, so that the staked overlapping bars, they will be scaled to the same level, usually at 1. And if we use the position dodge, so this will put the bars aside each other. So you can consider this will be a group bar plot, and within each group there is also a subgroup, and this subgroup is specified by some variables. And the position identity, it will does nothing. So basically, the bar plot will overlap with each other. Like if one bar is very small, then it actually can be overlapped by others, and then it will not show up in the figure. So this is the position adjustment. So probably we can go to the Markdown file and then show the see the effects of each of the function. So for example, for the previous one, if we do nothing about the position adjustment and just plot the geometry point, we see the plots are really, we cannot tell like how many points for each of the dots here. And if we use the position getter and using the function getter, we will see they will be spread out in the x-axis. And here I want to mention that using the function position getter with the seed, it will always generate the same results. So for example, if we test it here, and if we run it again, it will have the same layout, the figure layout. And if we remove the seed, probably every time you will see a very slightly different results, because the random noise is added to them at a very random style. So basically, every time you run this plot, you will see a slight difference.
If you put comma width equals 0, you only get
The
vertical height. The height equals comma height equals 0.
let me
Same thing that I can check it out. But that is
I see. Yeah, let me check it here.
that's what I found.
I see. Yeah, the width and height. So basically, you can actually control the which directions to put a random noise on by using the width and height. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the mentioning this point. So besides the point, we also can do something about the overlapping bar plot. So here, I probably just run it through that we first plot the geometry bar, and by specifying the group number, the group has the manufacturer and the highway at the y-axis, and then we specify the color to fill in the bar plot. If we use the position stake, it will stake all the plots together, one by one. And if we use the position fill, it will normalize all the data into one. So this is sometimes desirable if we only care about the proportions. So this is also achievable that you normalize your data first and then specify them, like input the normalized data with the first choice. So that is also doable. And if you dodge them together, dodge the bar plots, you will see the bars are located side by side with each other. So maybe we can do this exercise together, that we can change the position adjustment to be identity. So if we do that here, just change the position to be identity. So compared to the previous plot. So basically, we see that the bar plot will still keep overlap with each other. Like, for example, for this group, the others is covered by the green bar. So basically, this will it's not something we want because we don't see the details in the subgroups. So the identity will do nothing, and it will let the overlap happen. But the others, fail, stake, and dodge, they will try to either stake the bar plots together, normalize it, or put it aside. So this is about the position adjustment. And the next one is about scales. So here we try to learn two scales. One is the position scale and one is the kind of scale. So these two are most commonly used. And for the scales, we know that when we map something, like map the color to the to some variables, if we want to denote the values, this is actually achieved by setting the scales. So the scale setting has this general syntax that we use a scale and using the aesthetic name and using the type of the variables. So for example, the aesthetic can be position, color, fill, size, shape, etc., etc. And the type can be continuous discrete. So for the position scale, it actually contains the scale X or scale Y because we have two axes. And for the type, we have the discrete or continuous. And in this function, it contains a lot of arguments, such as the name. The name is whether we want to expand the axis, how we want to specify the breaks and the labels. So for example, if we want to set the axis name, we can directly specify the names to be X by using the scale X continuous function. So because the X here is the continuous variable, so we use the scale X continuous. And similarly, if we want to change the name of the Y-axis, simply change the X to be Y and the names to be Y. And sometimes we want to restrict our data to some point. We can specify the limits, the range of the X-axis by using the limits with a vector containing two values, denoting the starting point and end point. And we see this, we still see some kind of space between the limits and also the X-axis or Y-axis, like the white space here. So we actually can use the expansion parameter to control how much space we want to leave here. So for example, if you don't want any space, you can specify expansion to be 0. And if you want to like specify the expansion space to be some proportion of the whole axis, then you can use the multi specify the multi parameter, like the left axis space and the y the rightmost space. And also you can try to directly specify the expand by directly input the values there. And by looking at the x-axis, we see the breaks at each point. So this is also controllable using the breaks parameters. When you specify it to be null, so it will not show up. So if you specify to be some value like a vector, it will only have the 50, 75, and 100 show up. And besides that, you can adjust the labels by specifying the label parameters. So it's really kind of intuitive. Directly specify the breaks will give you this break ticks, and also the labels will show the text labels. So besides the position scales setting, you can actually do some transformation on it. So for example, using the scale X reverse, it will try to reverse the X-axis from the left to right. The original one is from the smallest to biggest. And you can use this function to reverse, make it from the biggest to the smallest. And on the other hand, you can also do some transformation on the X-axis by using the scale X nocturne or scale X continuous, specify the transformation to be nocturne. So there are also more other transformations. We are not going to go over them one by one, but there are plenty of choice you can choose. So for the color scale, I think this is probably the most interesting part to many of the people, because we want to customize the color in many occasions. So here you can, if the color is specified by the color parameter, for example, the shape, the point color, then you can use a scale color with this type, either discrete or continuous, or you want to manually set them. And if you use a color, specify the color in the field aesthetic mapping, for example, the bar color, the bar plot color, you can use a scale field and with the specific type. So here, using the field as an example, if we are working with the continuous variable, we can set the color palettes using the gradient. So this will give you two color gradient by specifying the low and the high color. It will generate a transition gradient color from the low to the high. And if you want to generate a 3-color gradient, then you can specify the low, mid, and high. So I think these two are very classic examples about the diverging color or the unidirectional color. For example, if you are working with some unidirectional data, for example, the gene expression from low to high, then this is just a one directional. You can use the scale field gradient. But if you are working with the two directions, for example, the up regulation, down regulation, we not only care about the scale, like how much the value is, but we also care about the up and down directions. Then you probably want to choose the gradient 2, which will give you a diverging color, like from the middle point, which is usually to be white. And the one direction is moving to gray, and another direction is moving to the brown. So this one will give you a more clear division for the low and high, and also the directions you care about. So besides that, you can use the scale field gradient n. It will produce an n color gradient, but I think this one is less widely used. And usually in your data, if you have some missing values, you can actually also try to specify the values, either just to ignore them or give it a transparent value, like put the NA value as an NA. But if you want to highlight the missing values in your data, you can use a red color. So this is also something very useful. If you don't specify anything, you probably get a gray color. So that one is a default color. And for the discrete color scales, the ggplot provides several good default to you. So basically, you can display them using the display Brewer wall function in the R color Brewer. So basically, this will give you the different color sets listed here, and you can actually specify some of them directly to the parameter in the scale field Brewer function. So this one is two simple examples using the set1 color and the set2 color. And besides the automatically generated color palette, you can directly specify your own color by using the menu function. So scale field menu using the values, put the color into a vector and specify it within it. And sometimes you want to specifically design, okay, what variables, what values it's given with what color, then you can use a named vector to more precisely control it. Okay, I think we can see some examples in the R Markdown file. So basically here, we have just one simple exercise you can try on your end. If you run this code, you will see there is no color on them. And based on the previously scale field color or scale color menu, try to make the box plot have some different color. So maybe I can give 2 minutes to work on this exercise. So I think this one is pretty straightforward. You can, because we use the geometry point, so we can actually have the drive to be give it a color. Map the drive to the color variable, and then specify the scale color menu to be the red, blue, and green. So that's the export. Probably we can also put a fill. Let's try. And also the scale menu. So in this way, we not only color the data to be the point to be red, blue, green, and also the box plot themselves to be the specific color. So with that, we will move on to the facet options in the ggplot, which is also very powerful in plotting part of your data and split them into different pieces. So the facet is actually means like the different faces on the geometry, and you can actually see your data has many dimensions, and you want to just visualize some of them. So this is what facet is doing. So there are 3 types of facet you can use, like facet now. It's just creating a single plot. So this is the default. And the facet wrap, it tries to wrap a 1D ribbon into a two dimension. So like 5 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6 different panels. They will be aggregated into different panels and presented in some way. And facet grid is trying to produce a 2D grid of different panels. So you only, for example, you specify one column to be a variable and another column to be another variable. It will produce the results for each of the variables to be a specific value. For example, 1A and 1B, etc. So this will tries to give you the plots based on like for each of the rows and columns. So for the facet wrap, it will wrap the different panels into a 2D. You can actually specify the column name here as A. And then there are also some other parameters you can specify, like the number of columns, number of rows, to configure the panel's shape. And also the direction here can be either H or V, showing whether you want to wrap them around, using the horizontal order or using the vertical order. So here it's a horizontal one. So for the facet grid is that we can spread the, we can control the X and the Y here, or A and B. Try to use, if you put the dot tilde A, it will try to spread the values across the columns. And if you specify the first argument first, and then it will spread along the rows. And if you specify both of them, it will have spread all the columns and the rows. So this one will try to split the data into different panels, and for each of the subset of data, make a own plot. Yeah.
This facet grid dot for one, that's the same as facet wrap with an H.
Yeah. So it's basically the same thing. If you specify, for example, the number of columns to be 1, and then it probably is just the grid point. Yeah. So there are some parameters you can control. So if you don't specify anything, then you will see each of the panels, they share the same scale of x-axis and y-axis. So this is the default action. You can actually control it using the scale parameter. So the default one is fixed. They are fixed across all panels. And sometimes you want the x-axis to be different across different panels. Or sometimes you want your Y to be different across different panels, and sometimes you want both of them to be different. So you can actually control them by specifying the free X, free Y, or even the free for no constraint at all. So there are also some other things to consider when using the facet. For example, when multiple data frames are used, especially for one layer, you use data frame 1, and for another layer, you use data frame 2. So, but there is no guarantee that data frame 1 and the data frame 2 always have the same facet variables. So basically, the missing facet variables in some data frame will be treated as they exist in every data frame. And if you want to facet on a continuous variable, because right now, what we've seen before is that it's 468. It's a discrete variable. If you want to do it on a continuous one, you need to do the discretization first. So here is some useful functions you can use: the cut interval, cut wise, or cut the numbers. And for the faceting, it has a unique advantage that when your data is really big, then using the grouping approach, for example, you assign the variables to some aesthetic attributes, even though you specify, for example, using different color, but when the data is really big, then they still are able to overlap a lot, and then this will make your plots look less clear. So the facet is a different approach that tries to split your data first, and then plot each panel one by one. So this one will be much more clear if you have a lot of data, but it also makes a small difference hard to see because they are quite far from each other. And using the grouping, they have an advantage that the small difference is easier to see because it's within the same plot, and whether this group and this group, they are located close to each other, it's really easy to tell. So basically, it really depends on your own data set. You can choose either grouping or faceting, and try to compare them, like which one give you a more clear message. So I think we can still work on one of the examples first. Using the facet. So for the facet, if we specify the facet now, it will do nothing. It will still generate the single plot for you. And if you use the facet wrap around the class, it will give you split the data according to the values in the class. And here, let's first plot it. So as we denoted before, that if you use a facet now, it will do no faceting. So basically, the plot is still one single plot. And if you do it wrap around the class, it will take each of the class, like a subset the data first, and then make the plots there. And if you scale, as we can see here, like each of the panels, they share the same scale of X and Y axis. So you can actually adjust the scales using the free X. So in this way, the data is more evenly spread across the X axis, and they don't have the same value across the X axis across the different panels. And if you choose the facet grid, it will try to create two different directions, like the column and the rows. They are like specified by either the year or class, and you can use the free scales set to be free to control whether the different panels share the same scale. And one important point we make is that when we have different data frames in the facet, so for example, here we have three variables in data frame 1, X, Y, and gender. And data frame 2, we only have X and Y. So gender, although we use it to facet, they don't really exist in the data frame 2. So when we run it, we still see that the facet is working. This is because the data frame 2, we treat the gender exists also in the data frame 2. So we can see that the red dot always exists in all the panels. So this is the point we make, that if there is a facet variable missing in some of the data frame, they will be treated as they exist. Okay, I think we can take another 10-minute break, and after we come back, we will talk about the coordinates and practice interesting examples. Okay, let's continue our final part for today is the coordinates. So basically, coordinates, I think, is quite interesting, and we probably have known it before, that the Cartesian coordinates, which is usually what we use, like X and Y, and there is also a polar coordinates by specifying the theta, which means the angle between this vector to our origin, and also the length of the vector. So basically, these two different coordinate systems can yield very different results. Specifically for the Cartesian coordinates, it's considered to be a linear coordinates, and on the other hand, the polar coordinates is considered to be nonlinear. So basically, in this figure, even though they are showing the same type of data, but in these two coordinate systems, they can be quite different. Like for example, the distance between the dot and the regions is kind of distorted in the polar coordinates. So let's first talk about the linear coordinate system. First of all, we can use the function to do some kind of zoom in. Specifically, if your plot is really big and you only care about a specific region, of your plot, you can use the coordinate Cartesian by specifying the limit to be 4 and 6. So basically, you will only look at the small chunk of your plot. So here is a small question that compared to scale X continuous, what do you find? So basically, we can check our results. The markdown results. So basically, here I provided two code template for you guys. So one is the base plot showing the whole range, and one is using the scale X continuous. And basically, what it does is trying to split the data, like only keep the data between 4 and 6, and also the coordinate Cartesian by specifying the limit. So the direct difference we saw is that the regression line between these two is different. And this is because that after we chunk the data between 4 and 6 using the scale X continuous by setting the limit, then after that, we will fit the data using the geometry smooth. But in this coordinate Cartesian, it will not remove the data. So what it does is just trying to zoom in this specific area. So the curve is still the original curve. So this is a very giant difference between the coordinate Cartesian and the scale S continuous. So basically, if you want to preserve the original plotting, like the regression, even the fitting curve, etc. So basically, if you want to preserve the curve using all the data, you should consider the coordinate Cartesian. And if you still like only care about this part of data, you don't want to scale up to the other data set, you can use the scale S continuous. So this is the difference between these two.
Plus X the any like base plot with any TM. What is that?
So based on you mean like this one?
No, you don't need to scale X. You can just go like base plus geom blah 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 plus X and p-value.
It's doing the same thing as the scale X continuous limits. So that one is considered to be a like abbreviation of this known expression here. Yeah. Right. And also there is a difference between the coordinate flip and also directly switch X and Y. So again, like everything we do in the coordinate system is just a manipulation on the figure. It will not do any kind of like data fitting, etc. So again, if we check the RStudio code using the coordinate flip, we will see that. So this is the first figure. It's the original figure, and if we simply swap the X and the Y, like just try to swap the mapping, then we will see that the resulting figure is not a flip of the original figure. Like you cannot directly change from the original figure to the second figure because they do some kind of fitting by themselves. But if you just use the original figure and use the coordinate flip, you can clearly see this figure and this figure. They are basically the same figure, but just flip at the X and the Y. Like the curve it's the same curve. So this is also another difference between the coordinate flip and also the X and Y swapping method. And sometimes we want to have the coordinate to be the same scale, like the same unit of x corresponds to the same unit of y. So we can directly write the coordinate fix by specifying the ratio to be 1. And if you want to specify the ratio to be 10, then you have one axis is like a 10, like this, even for the same length, one unit have a 10 times bigger than the other one. So for the nonlinear coordinate system, I think it's very important to introduce two parts. One is a coordinate trans. You can specify what kind of transformation you want for either x or y. So here in the left and in the right, the left panel is a linear coordinate system, and the right panel is we do a log10 transformation for both x and y. So here we can clearly see that the straight line no longer be a straight line. And I think this log10 transformation sometimes is useful when you have like a specific model in your own data. Like for example, when you have like you are building some kind of functional model, and then visualizing the 0 to 100 in your own scale. In the original scale, is too dense in some area. Then you can consider using the log10 transformation to do that. So another interesting nonlinear coordinate system is the polar coordinate system. So still consider our original staked bar plot. We have 3 different components. And we can consider that if we try to make the polar coordinate system simply by collecting the left-hindmost and the rightmost point in the x-axis, so you can consider it will form some kind of circles, like the red part is always at the outside, the blue part will always be the inner side. So basically, you will end up with this plot. And on the other hand, if you try to collect the bottommost and the topmost of y-axis, like try to collect these two points, you will end up with this figure like this. So this is just a simple trick that we can actually transform a staked bar plot into a pie plot. So this is an interesting thing. You can try on your end. So how to use it? You simply specify the theta either to be x or y. You will try to collect the 2 limit point and then make the transformation from the linear system to the polar system. So I think we can check the examples in the R Markdown file. Specifically here, we can specify the coordinate fix to make the figure that each of 1 unit of y and 1 unit of x, they can be specified to be a certain ratio. And for the nonlinear part, we here in the base plot, we plot this bar plot, staked bar plot. Not staked bar plot, but just trying to visualize the linear coordinate system and log10 transform the coordinate system. So this is what I talk about when your data is like really the range is really huge. You can use the log10 to somehow normalize your data to be a more normal scale. And if you use the exponential 10, this will give you really like another nonlinear coordinate system in the exponential scale. So for the polar coordinate system, still we can check the staked bar plot. It's a single bar plot, and you can consider try to specify the theta, either trying to collect the y, set the y as the theta, give you the pie plot, or simply use the x as a theta, which will give you this dollar shape. So I think that's everything we have today. And so today is a Valentine's Day. So I think you guys really enough study. So I give you some kind of a special bonus, like extra quiz for you to solve. So right now, I think in the next slides, there is some kind of a hard curve, and probably we can do a small exercise that try to generate this hard curve by yourself. Maybe I can give you guys maybe 5 minutes to finish this task. So the idea is very simple. You simply first generate the data and then try to collect the dot with some line. And then after you finish plotting using ggplot2, you can save into an image. So to generate this hard curve, as we denoted here, we will start it from first, we need to have the data, generate the data, like each of the data should have 2 coordinates, x and y. And so basically, for example, if we take the this curve as an example, we simply just need to have a t that ranges from a certain value, and then this will generate x and the corresponding y. So basically, for each of the t, we put into this function, get the x, and then put into this known function to get y. So in that sense, we will generate several points, and then we can just plot them in the 2 x1 Cartesian coordinates, and then we can use a geometry polygon to collect each of the points. So this collectively will give us the final figure. All right, so let's just do it in this R Markdown. So this is the function I wrote previously, but we can walk through the function together. That we first generate a data frame. It has a t because we know that in the previous slides, the t is inside of the sin x. So basically, we can make t ranges from 0 to 2 pi as a range of the t, and then we can define 2 functions, x and y, which is just like a function of t. So after that, we specify the t. We input the values of data t inside the y function and generate another. Yeah, maybe I can just write it here. We can clearly see what's inside the function and the data frame. So basically, for the t, right now it has, for the data, it right now has a t, and the ranges from 0 to 2 pi, with a step size of 0.01. And then we can supply the t to function y, and this will give our y values. And then we can similarly, we can specify it to the x function, give us the x values. So after that, we will have everything like the paired x and y values. So I can check the data, right? So for every t, we have a corresponding x and a corresponding y. So after that, we can directly supply it into the ggplot by specifying the data, and the x maps to the variable x, the y-axis mapped to the variable y. And after that, we can use a polygon to collect the points together. So here, let me first simply just run this function. So this will give us some kind of existing figure. And now we can set the aesthetic attributes. Wait a moment. Something I'm not done. Set the attributes like a fill using the red color. Or if you don't want any color, just a fill with NA, and the color with another color set, and you can set the transparency by setting the alpha. And let me try to run it. And after that, you can try to adjust the theme to be classic. So the theme is what we are going to learn tomorrow, but we can just first use it here today. So after that, we will save the ggplot2 plot into a variable part, and to visualize it, simply just put it. So maybe just run this again to see the plots in the IDE. So basically, this is the final results we get. Yeah, so pretty simple or straightforward, because what you need to do is to construct the data frame and put it into the ggplot using the geometry of polygon. So to save it into an image, again, this is something we are going to learn tomorrow, but you can specify a file name, specify the width of the figure and the height of the figure, and put the plot as the first argument. And then after running this, you can see whether the results is the one we saw in the terminal. So this is the saved PNG file. Yes. All right. So besides this, I want to take another 5 minutes to show some fun things. You probably after this workshop, you probably can use it to make your headshot for your social media, etc. So this is something I think is really fun. So basically, if you are going to this package's website, it will show how to make a mosaic image from input image, like a PNG file. So first of all, we install all the packages needed. If you haven't done it, you can do it on your own. And then we read the image, like this is our figure, this is our saved file. So we can read it into the mosaic format. So what the functions here is a function in the break R. This might take some time because the image is a little bit big and the package is kind of slow.
The first line of saving
the save, yeah.
The line above that. My heart understood PNG.
Right. So this is simply just save the hard plot into the file name, the my hard PNG.
And what was that line?
The GG save.
That line 404. What is that doing? That's saying.
No, it's just specifying the path of the file.
Just the path.
Yeah. So simply assign the path, which is under this directory.
You can have that line and just save it whatever you want to work.
Right. You can change it to some other path. Yeah. So after we reading the, it's a little bit slow. Okay, finally we get it. So after we reading the image, the break R provides some interesting function. For example, you can build the mosaic to actually convert the PNG file into a file that is in the Lego style. And they also provide another function called build instructions, which is kind of interesting that it shows the building process from step 1 to step 6, like how we build the part step by step. So this 6 is specified using the number of steps equals to 6. You can also specify it to be some other numbers. So after that, we know that the build, this figure is really like a facet figure, like it has different panels. And if we take a look at the build function object and take a look at the data. For example, we take a look at the data itself. You can actually see the step is step 1, step 2, step 6, all the way to the step 6. So basically, you can actually say this is exactly the facet building. So what we can do is that because this is a stepwise procedure, you can actually extract each of the figure, and then you have 6 figures. As you have 6 figures, you can actually make it into a movie or into a GIF function. So this is how you can translate from the static image to some kind of dynamic videos, etc. So what we can do is that we can assign this build to a new variable, and then use the filter function just to keep the data that it belongs to step 1. And because we didn't change anything about the plotting itself, we only changed the data, right? Here we just filter the data and assign to the S1 data. So that after we again, like specify the scale of X, specify the scale of Y, we can actually visualize the S1 by simply using it. So this is how we can extract the different panels. So we do it for step 2, step 3, step 4, and step 6. And now we have 6 different figures. We can actually combine them into a GIF file using the animation. So if we run it here. So GIF is essentially is just like a series of the figures. And if we open it, for example, using the Google Chrome or using the Safari, so you can see the building process of this part image. So pretty cool, right? If you have other you can set the number of steps to be something bigger, and maybe you can make it more with a higher resolution, with more detailed steps. But this is up to you. So I give you the code. You probably can do it on your own. So again, pretty cool. You can use the ggplot and also the ggplot2 extensions to finish a lot of interesting things. This is just a small example. So with that, I think we conclude today. I'm staying here for another 10 minutes. If you have any questions, you can ask. And if not, you are free to leave. So yeah, I think you guys can work on play with this tool a little bit.